back to Young Money. We're about to sit down with the managing director and co-founder of BrandedYouth. Now, with young people increasingly dominating the economy and certainly forming part of the future engine of all corporate activity, it's even more important for corporates to understand how they tap into the hearts and the souls of the youth population. Let's find out from the MD of BrandedYouth exactly how that works. Bradley, Maseko, it's lovely to have you on the show. Maybe just let's start off with the idea of BrandedYouth. How did that come about?
BrandedYouth actually started back in 2009 in Cape Town, and how it came about was that I had been studying marketing at the AAA School of Advertising, and I obviously became exposed to what brands were doing within the youth market.
Right.
And I realized that there was a need for brands to better kind of understand what exactly was happening in the youth market before engaging with the young people. I then took a step back and say to myself, look, how's about I become the guy who is the intermediary between the brands and the youth market? And then that was the foundation of BrandedYouth. It was me stepping back and saying, I would like to be the foundation. I would like to be the intermediary, the people that brands and organizations come to in order to get insights and in order to effectively engage with the young people.
So from that moment where you took that decision to go into this entrepreneurial space and fill a very evident gap, what's the experience been like? What was the reception in the market, especially to corporates, where you're saying, look, I can help you capture hearts and minds of young people?
So it was obviously a very, very difficult period for myself, in the sense that brands, I would go into meetings, I would go into presentations, and brands would understand that I knew what was missing, I knew what was needed in the market, but then I didn't have a profile. So I didn't have the experience, I didn't have the profile. I couldn't say to them, look, I did this for this brand 3 years ago, I did this 4 months ago. I literally was walking in and saying, look, this is me, this is the company that I'm representing, and these are the ideas that we have. And in as much as they liked the ideas, I think it's the key man risk factor that they had to step back and say, look, if we invest in this company, will they be able to deliver? So more than just the words, will they be able to actually deliver on what they're saying? And it was a very difficult period. And as a result, what most small businesses end up doing is they end up underpricing so as to get the business and to get the portfolio. And then they only start breaking even after 3-4 years, because everyone wants to see what you did 2 years back. They want to see what you did for the last brand in order for them to invest in your
Were you
idea.
pushed into that corner of having to underprice to get in? And how did the strategy, how were you able to then, switch the point to the point where you are saying, now I'm going to charge market-related pricing? At what point did you feel that you owned the space that you were in?
So the small business route is a very difficult one, and I've broken it down into different stages. So there's the stage where you go and you knock on the doors, like you knock to get into the meetings. You want to just sit in front of them and present yourself. And then there's the second phase where they say, okay, look, we like your presentation, let's see how you price yourself. And then you obviously start pricing, but you're not getting the business. And then you need to keep making enough noise in order for them to start realizing that your brand is something that is not going away. So it's an entity that actually exists and will continue to exist, even if they don't give you business. Sadly, in South Africa, and if you step back and you look at it in most African countries, it's something that requires maybe a 3 to 4 year period for brands to now actually start emailing you and calling you back and saying, listen, we know what you offer and we would like you to send us a proposal on A, B, C, and D. So I had to do ridiculous pricing strategies in order to just get in and do the work. So I'm not even talking breaking even, I'm just talking literally getting the brief, doing the work, getting the payment, but that payment is just to cover the costs. Breaking even was just well, something that you fantasize about, you
But
know?
it's 7 years later, right? You're 7 years in. It sounds like you've paid your dues. You've done the hard work at the bottom where it's really, really not glamorous. What does the business look like now? And how's that different from where you started?
So it's very interesting because I go to different places and I meet with different clients, and everyone kind of says, wow, it's amazing the work that you're doing. It's amazing where you've reached and the clients that you have and the amount of, well, income or your turnover now compared to 7 years back or whatever. What's interesting is that it's been a very amazing period for myself, if I can say, because I've gotten to a stage where I've got very big clients in terms of, if I talk automotive, if I talk banking, if I talk telecommunications. So I'm now dealing with brands such as Standard Bank, I'm dealing with brands such as WeChat, Honda, and the likes. And these are brands that I would have fantasized about years back. But over and above that, I think it's when you look back and you look at the company account and you look at the funds that you used to get years back and you look at the amounts that are coming in now. It's interesting, and it's interesting in the sense that it's a growth process. So I've obviously grown in terms of I'm no longer the key man. I actually have a team now. So we are a small team of 6. But I have people that go and execute the work. So we have 6 permanent workers, but on any given day, we have up to 50 temporary workers, like around the different provinces. So we have work that we do in the Western Cape, we have work that we do in KZN. So given that the client wants, for example, work to be done in KZN, we know that we have 2 people from the office that go on the ground, and then we have the temporary team from KZN that will be able to execute, which is totally, like I said, a step back from where we were, where I was the person who was doing all the work 100%.
So you were everything. You were doing the copyright, you were the receptionist.
I was the tea lady, I was the financial guy, I was the HR, I was everything.
But I think that's a very interesting insight, because it's a very common theme in the story of emerging entrepreneurs that we hear. And now that you're in a position where you're leading teams, what was that transition like for you, moving from having to let go of having your fingers into everything and trusting other people with essentially your brainchild and your baby?
Very difficult, and very difficult because if you look at Branded Youth, for most brands, they literally invest in the founder of Branded Youth, so they invest in Bradley. So Bradley is basically the new business developer, but over and above that, when I go into the presentations and I close the deal, I establish relationships with a whole lot of clients. So they find it easier to communicate with me, and they find it easier to complain or to add positive feedback.
Because you own the relationship.
Exactly. So when you now send someone else from the team to go to the presentation or to give feedback, they feel like, oh, okay, now we've paid. Now he's taking a step back. But when he was pitching for the business, he was very passionate. So I find myself mostly in situations whereby I have to continue the relationship to the best of my ability to the end of it.
Absolutely. But I want to come back to your personal story and how do you land up in this conversation that we're having today? Where does Bradley come from? What has been your biggest motivators that have allowed you to stay the course even when you weren't even breaking even?
So I've always surrounded myself by heavyweights in the marketing industry. Thebe Ikalafeng, for example, is one of my mentors. And back when I was in Cape Town, the then MD of a company that used to be called JC Marketing Brands, which had Red Bull, Mentos, Lindt, James was a very, very good mentor of mine. So whenever they did anything with regards to the different brands, he would invite me to come along so I could see what the brands were doing to actually engage with the young people. I've been blessed in the sense that I'm a very, very assertive individual in the sense, if I decide I'm going to go for something, I go for it and I execute it and I make sure that I deliver on the results. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, I've got people that I've learned from. For example, Thebe Ikalafeng, like I said. Whenever I have problems and whenever I'm having a difficulty in a particular situation or with a particular brand, I then step back and ask for advice as to, okay, what's the best method or what's the best approach with regards to this particular client. And I think a lot of small businesses fail because they actually don't have funding. And they are not making the money. So you need money in order to move. You need money in order to deliver. So you need money to pay your team as well, you know. So I've been fortunate in the sense that from a personal point of view, without necessarily going to the financial institutions, the different banks in order to ask for funding, or without getting a grant from this organization or that organization, I've sacrificed finances from within. So like I've taken my own finances and I've said, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice not paying myself for the next 6 months, but everything that I have is going into this because I know that when it comes back, it's a tenfold investment. But the third thing, like I said earlier on with regards to South Africa and most African countries, it's not that every small business or every small entrepreneur has that ability to say, I'm going to take my own funds or funds from family to do that. And that's the reason why they fail.
What do you think we could be doing differently as a country to better support small businesses, but in particular around the funding issue? I think
banks need to take a step back and realize that some of the requirements that they have for startups and small businesses are not practical. They're like, a lot of organizations, private and public, will tell you that, listen, we have this funding solution for startups and small businesses. But then if you actually go through the requirements, you actually find that it's virtually impossible for you to get the money. So when you start making 2 million and above, that's when it's easy for you to get funding.
And it takes a long time before you start hitting 2 million.
It takes a long time. Yeah. So if you have a great idea, or if you are breaking even or just making something like 350,000 and you think you're going to go and get funding, you're going to have a difficult period. But it's at that point when you are making the small amounts that you actually need money to inject so that you start making the big amounts. It's sad, but if you do look at the requirements, you will actually see that everyone offers something for small businesses. But are the requirements realistic?
It's not enough to have a product for small businesses if the requirements aren't realistic. Yeah. And perhaps as we begin to wrap up the conversation, if you could reflect back on your journey, what do you think was your biggest mistake as an entrepreneur?
My biggest mistake was arrogance. My biggest mistake was arrogance. So I had a period in which I would go to presentations to present what I believed in. So I had a period in which I would go in and I would present my package, what I believed in, and I was narrow-minded. Basically, I was that horse that was just like that. And I got to a point where I realized that I need to present Branded Youth and then listen to the client and listen to what their needs and concerns are. Because it's only when you address what their needs are that they say, you know what, actually we need to put money into this because this is what we need. So I had a 100% understanding of Branded Youth and very little understanding of my clients. And it's now a complete turnaround in the sense that I present Branded Youth for 2 minutes and then I cater to the client for the rest of the meeting, which was my biggest mistake.
Well, there you have it. That is Bradley Maseko. He is the managing director and co-founder of Branded Youth. His biggest mistake was not learning to focus on the client initially. And he's learned that lesson, and 7 years later, he's bagged some of the biggest clients across multiple industries in South Africa. This is how you win the hearts and minds of young people in corporate South Africa. And that also brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Remember that if you want the Young Money crew to come to you, all you need to do is just follow me on Twitter @TheRealNosy, or you can follow me at CNBC Africa. Let us know how you're making those Mandelas and those dollars. Until next time, it's goodbye.